Every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday. Tuesday, Casual Tuesday. Wednesday, Casual Hump Day. Thursday, Casual Thurs. That's what we call it. And Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, October 4th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ryan Grimm, reporter, founder at Drop Site News, co-host of Counterpoints, will be joining us to look back on this week. Also on the program, Israel continues bombing Beirut. Meanwhile, kills 99 in the past day in Gaza. In this country, the International Longshoremen Association suspends its strike after reaching a pay increase deal. Speaking of jobs, 254,000 jobs added in September, beating expectations by a mile and causing recession fears to recede. Also on the program today, Trump announces he would strip legal status from immigrants on temporary protected status. Republicans find a Trump judge to halt student loan cancellation again. At least 213 dead in the wake of Hurricane Helene. 200 at least still missing. 1 million without power as FEMA is underfunded. Former Colorado county clerk gets 9 years in a MAGA voting data scheme. And yet another Mayor Adams aide has his phone seized. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed Friday. Do we have Casual Friday?
Casual Friday.
I had forgotten about what we called it.
I mean, you are wearing your soft collar shirt. That didn't trigger
that should have given
memories.
Me a hint. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are, of course, 32 days away from the election. And so we will be talking somewhat about that. Apparently, that's a big deal that's happening soon. There are some new polls out. Emerson National Poll has Harris at 50%, Trump at 48%. The Nevada Independent has Harris up by 3 and Rosen up by 7. Emma was already talking about maybe releasing her predictions.
I know.
Which she's been. We're not going to do it now.
Well, I literally have a map that I'm such a dork. I made a map on the internet, I guess, a few days ago about what I think is going to go down. I mean, I don't want to jinx anything, so knocking on wood as we speak. But
I mean, if you don't feel comfortable saying it, I understand. I mean, all of what we're seeing now is really just a surrogate for gambling issues.
Basically,
right.
You can just see what my mindset is like. But I think that she'll, as of now, my prediction a month out is Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. She wins, so that gets her to 270 plus the single district in Nebraska. But I also think that she will end up winning North Carolina and Nevada. My guess is that it's a close one in Georgia. Probably loses that because of the lag with Latino voters, although Bernie Sanders is around. Texas rallying, and maybe Arizona at the end of the day because he still has some popularity with Latino voters down there. Maybe that makes a difference. But I think she'll still lose Georgia and Arizona, but that would be more than enough to win the election.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go. It's on the record.
It's on the record, and you can get your bets in early while the odds are still favorable to you on your favorite election voting platform.
Oh, that's
In the
dark.
meantime, the jobs numbers that came out today were pretty big, and that's almost an understatement. The expectations were 140,000 jobs, and in fact, 254,000 jobs were created in September. And we should also say that included upward revisions to the past 2 months. 55,000 added in July, 17,000 added in August, which brought those job gains to 144,000, 159,000 respectively. There are a lot of people who are saying, had the Fed been aware somehow, I don't know how you would do that, that 254,000 jobs were going to be created in September, they probably wouldn't have cut rates by 50 basis points. So it's that good of a jobs report. And look, obviously there are structural problems with our economy, but during a recession, those structural problems remain the same, but everybody gets, hurt more, particularly those people who are sort of losing out on stuff. So the idea that we may not be headed into a recession is a good thing.
And a good thing for the election, too, because we're seeing some numbers that Harris has erased Trump's lead on inflation and has been narrowing the lead in terms of how people view who would be better for the economy, which is unheard of in my lifetime for a Democrat.
We shall see. We'll be talking, obviously, Ryan Grimm, more about this election. There's some stuff that I'm not too happy about, but we can save that. But it's not all for my personal happiness, but nevertheless, someone could check in with me occasionally. In the meantime, Donald Trump is on he's in Saginaw, Michigan, pushing his no taxes on tips proposal, which, to be clear, just so everyone knows this, the range of workers and what he considers tips extends to people who live in multi-million-dollar apartments in New York City that they've paid through their like hedge funding. What constitutes tips in Donald Trump's world is very, very broad, and it's not really focused on people that you and I consider who get tips. But here is a moment where, and this is a fascinating moment as far as I'm concerned, because one, it reveals to a bunch of theoretically working class people who have come to visit Donald Trump that Donald Trump, if he literally could defecate on these people, he would. He would. But I also have an interesting theory too, is like how it's received by them. Let's get out of the potty talk. But here is Donald Trump admitting what I think, people who've followed his career in New York are completely aware of.
You know what's going to happen? You're going to end up doing a lot more business, I think. I think you're going to actually end up, so remember, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. And with overtime too, I think that could be a profit-making deal too, because I think you're going to have a lot more overtime if you do that. Because of that, you're going to end up with a lot more overtime. I used to hate to pay overtime.
Pause it for one second.
I was in the
there's absolutely, I guess his argument is that you will get overtime because your employer will not hesitate to give you overtime because they won't have, and I don't know if the taxes that are suspended are on income taxes or if they're on payroll taxes. I suspect it's only income taxes. If it's on payroll taxes, understand that's a horrible situation.
Yes.
You begin to cut into Social Security. It is really a mechanism to cut Social Security. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's only on income taxes, in which case there is no incentive whatsoever from your employer to give you overtime. The fact that you're not getting taxed on it doesn't encourage them. if it is that he's undercutting payroll taxes on this, it's highly problematic for Social Security. But let's go back a little bit.
Could be a profit-making deal too, because I think you're going to have a lot more overtime if you do that. Because of that, you're going to end up with a lot more overtime. I used to hate to pay overtime. When I was in the private sector, they say, "Oh, I don't want over." You know, I shouldn't tell you this. I'd go out and get other people and let them work regular time. It's terrible. I'd say, "Don't get me 10 other guys. I don't want to have time and a half. I don't want to have." But it'll be great. I mean, it'll be those three things are great. But our seniors really deserve it because they've been decimated. And the seniors, please vote for Donald Trump, okay? Because they're not doing it for you. They're not doing it. Get out and vote and get all you.
So Donald Trump, concedes that like at every turn that I could as an employer, I would try and rip off workers. Now, to be fair to Trump, he also would rip off contractors.
Yep.
And so it wasn't just the workers he would rip off. He would rip off everybody. And he certainly knew how to rip off workers. Now, as I'm looking, it does exempt overtime from income tax and both sides of the payroll tax. So it would be really devastating to people's Social Security down the road. There's a certain amount of money that they will be making, and in which case it may even encourage employers to give people overtime because
to avoid the taxes.
They don't have to pay the taxes with other people's Social Security. But again, it's all this money is going into essentially you can look at it as social insurance, as the risk pool, and the least amount of, premiums, if you want to look at it that way, go into Social Security. That means less payout at the end. So it's a bad idea from a public policy and a retirement perspective. But my theory about him admitting to people that he used to screw over his workers is that, it all gets back to that interview we did years ago from a professor who had done something on Joseph Mesmer and mesmerism. Mesmer was like a snake oil salesman, and one of the things that she said that people liked about Trump is that they know he's lying, but that they feel he's lying on their behalf
for them. Yes.
And when he goes and admits, like, look, I would screw over people like you before, but now I won't, just because we're on a different team. It basically enhances, I think, their trust in him.
I think, yeah. I mean, we're in this era where politics, unfortunately for some people, I think has become so... The effects of our government are, there's such a distance in how people perceive what government is doing for them versus whether or not they're, I don't know, in terms of Trump supporters, they're triggering the libs. Like, there's no association in between what government does for you and your lives and who you're voting for, because it's more about Trump pissing off the people that piss you off than it is about him delivering for you in any real material way. And that's, I think, the problem in terms of what the Democrats haven't been able to communicate for so many years, their vision versus his. Now, I don't know. I mean, he's also kind of just leading a cult there. Yep. But he's rich guy to worship. He's prosperity gospel incarnate. So when he talks about ripping off workers, the people that support him and bow down to the strongman, they think in the back of their minds it's nonsensical, but they think, well, they probably deserved it, because a big hallmark of conservatism is like, you don't really empathize with other people until it happens to you. And there's something about Trump's charisma and the way he approaches things that makes them think, well, it's not going to be against me.
I mean, I think it's also there's this dynamic of like, when the Celtics used to play Bill Laimbeer, I'm dating myself on the Detroit Pistons. Probably nobody knows who I'm talking about. But the basketball in the 80s was very much about, you're going to post up on the opposite team. Maybe you kick it out, but very rarely. It's really just about posting up on the opposite team. And so every team would have one guy whose job it was to throw some elbows and literally inflict pain on people who are posting up. Detroit had this guy, Bill Lambier, and he was the type of player where like you'd say, he's an a-hole unless he's on your team.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, exactly everything he's doing is perfectly fine because he's doing it on your behalf. And I think when Trump comes out there and says like, I screwed over workers all the time. Now that he's telling them, they think like, oh, that indicates he's going to screw over other people on our behalf. And,
but I'll say in terms of how it appeals to people outside of his base, there's diminishing returns in this regard because he's already been president.
But he's, the bottom line is the dude's stuck at 47, 48. It's really just a question in every race whether Harris can pick up 48 or 49%. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, that's the question. He's not going anywhere. He's not dropping. He's not going down. And how many people come out to vote is obviously going to be the issue. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Ryan Grimm about this and more. But first, since I already dated myself, if you were born after 1970, there's a very good chance that your first razor was a multi-blade razor where it's like 2 or 3. It's like an arms race, like 5 or 7 blades. These razors have been the status quo for almost 50 years now. According to a recent study, 2/3 of men expect some irritation when they shave, and there's virtually no information on how to prevent irritation. And at the same time, over 2 billion plastic razors entered the landfill each year in the U.S. alone. It's absurd. This is why Henson Shaving wants to change the shaving industry. Not through gimmicks like subscriptions or moisturizing strips, but through groundbreaking research on the impact shaving has on your skin. The bottom line is you want a clean shave without irritation. It's not a function of a sharp blade. Anybody can make a sharp blade. It is the bounce in the blade. It is how stable that blade is. And Henson Shaving is a aerospace machinist, producers, aerospace technology machine shop in Canada that's made parts for the Mars rover, for the International Space Station, and they have figured out how to have the blade hang out over the shaver by 0.0013 of an inch. That is the like less than the thickness of a human hair. And what it does is it keeps the blade from wobbling like a diving board, and it gives you an incredibly smooth and comfortable shave. I only shave here, and here, and here now. I don't use any shaving cream. It is it's just such a clean, perfect shave. And the beauty of it is once you buy a Henson razor, and they're really nice pieces of aluminum and the way that they're forged. I mean, they're beautiful looking, but once you buy one, there's no subscription. There's no proprietary blades. You use those old school dual edge shaving blades, and it only costs you about $3 to $5 a year after you buy a razor. This is the last razor you will ever have to buy, and it's the last one you will ever want to buy. Of course, though, once you get it, you'll end up thinking like, oh, this is a good birthday or Father's Day present or something like that. Mother's Day present, frankly. And now they're going to give you 100 blades for free. So it's not going to cost you anything for a couple of years. You're not going to have to buy any blades. It is time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that's going to last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/majority. Pick the razor for you. Use the code majority. You're going to get 2 years worth of blades free with your razor. Just make sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/majority. Use the code majority. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube description. Also, today's episode brought to you by, I mean, I love the Henson razor, but in terms of like sponsors, everybody knows my favorite sponsor, Sunset Lake CBD.com. Summer's officially over, folks. That means we're in for cooler weather, more family gatherings, and you know what that means? more stress, not to mention the election.
Oh my God.
I've got good news. Our friends at Sunset Lake can help you navigate some of that stress. Right now, you can head over to the website, use the coupon code October24. One word, October, number 2 and 4. October 24, no spaces. You can save 35% on infused edible products. That means CBD coffee, CBD in soft gels, CBD in fudge. I can't eat the fudge because I have a problem with sweets. If I eat one piece of the fudge, I'll eat like all 20 or whatever it's there. I can't do that. But the coffee, I love. Soft gels are great. And they also have hemp-derived THC gummies if you want to have a little bit more fun, as it were. Check it out. I have done that. That is my Friday night. I've got to watch a movie with Saul. Sometimes the movies are not my favorite, and they get a lot better with one or two of those, like either the Delta Non or the THC CBD gummies. Check it out. Visit sunsetlakesabade.com. Use the code October24 to save 35% on all edibles. The sale ends October 8th. So you got basically through the weekend. See their website for sale terms and conditions. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description. As always, sunsetlakesabade.com. An amazing company. Third-party testing on all their products. Great farming and business practices. And they have donated thousands and thousands of dollars to movement stuff like strike funds and Planned Parenthood and carceral reform. And they've engaged in mutual aid and give directly. I mean, just in a refugee resettlement, all these things. Check them out. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Ryan Grimm will be here. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Pleasure to welcome back to the program Ryan Grimm, reporter, founder, co-founder of Drop Site News, co-host of Counterpoints. Drop Site News has already had half a dozen massive exposés.
Yes,
Honestly,
cranking them out.
it's been crazy. This is I mean, was this like a Bob Woodward situation where you're holding it back for your own enterprise? Like, is this all stuff that you had reported 6 months ago, and then you just held it all back for when you were launching the new site?
We didn't hold anything back. But some things take a while to come to fruition, and so the timing was good on some of the things. But yeah,
Awesome.
I've never been one to. I just constitutionally I'm incapable of.
I was being facetious,
yeah.
and using this opportunity to make fun of Woodward, but I guess you're a little.
No, but it's a thing. It's not just Woodward. Like a lot of people.
Oh, they all do this.
Yeah.
Like Maggie Haberman, right?
I was just about to say, right.
Saved half the stories on Trump that were damning for him for when, she had to move on in terms of like where she wanted to report, I guess, for her career. But
yeah, and sometimes you only have the stuff. They're like, okay, you can use this for your book, but I will not give it to you under any other circumstances. So sometimes that's the case, but anyway.
All right. Well, nevertheless, you guys are doing a great job over there, and let's just start with, we're watching the expansion of this war. It is now a regional war. It has been largely driven by Israel's desire to expand the war. They have bombed Yemen. They have bombed Lebanon. They have assassinated people in Iran. They have committed what Leon Panetta's words, not mine, although also mine, terrorism in their in the whole pager thing blowing up. And the U.S. seems to be not tapping the brakes, but in some way sort of putting the car in neutral, if not putting gas in the car and then also putting it in neutral and letting Israel like push it down the hill. What's going on with this? Like, I noticed we're reading more about like McGurk and Hochstein and what is your sense of what's happening? Like, why are we even hearing about these guys now?
And just to underline real quickly, the Yemen bombing, like that's something that I've been covering for 10 years now. And the port of Hodeidah, which Israel struck with a massive attack, is the entire linchpin to the famine in Yemen. Like when that was shut down, that's when you had famine. When that was able to be opened up again and you could get humanitarian aid flowing again, that's when you went from, famine to just absolutely miserable conditions, but not famine. And so that port was back up and Israel struck that fort, fiercely. And so the fallout from that strike, depending on, whether they can get it up and running again, could implicate hundreds of thousands of lives. And because there's such a huge war going on across the region, it's just kind of got passed by. But I think when it comes to McGurk and Hochstein, they kind of personify what we understand as America's bipartisan foreign policy that isn't influenced by elections. This is a guy who's served like basically every administration. Was like instrumental in our Iraq strategy or implementing our Iraq strategy. He has had as his North Star for like decades normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Like that has been his thing. He's been pitching it internally that, he thinks that unlocks the key to everything. It helped, he quit briefly, right, during the Trump administration, but in general was like a pretty good, like he pushed in general, he like pushed back against Trump at times. But he and Kushner were pretty much on the same page when it came to this normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. And so I think the reason he's getting more attention now is that it's so clear that we do have this like permanent foreign policy that is immune from political pressure and immune from elections. And we need some way of understanding that. And so we're like, oh, it's Brett. Must be Brett.
Well, let me ask you.
I just want to let me just fill in some of that, just only, and then go ahead. But Atrios had this post that I think really sort of outlined this whole sort of continuity. One was a clip from during Iraq where Condoleezza Rice said what we're seeing here, in a sense, this is talking about attempts to make peace between Israel and Lebanon. What we're seeing here, in a sense, is the growing birth pangs of a new Middle East. Whatever we do, we have to be certain that we're pushing toward the new Middle East and not going back to the old Middle East. This was, incidentally, over almost 20 years ago. Now you've got Hochstein and McGurk, who are out there saying essentially that are describing Israel's Lebanon operations as a history-defining moment, one that will reshape the Middle East for the better for years to come. McGurk first, apparently came back to public service to serve in the CPA. That's the Coalition Provisional Authority for the prefect. I can't remember his name now. It's been so long, but in Baghdad. And I mean,
Paul Bremer, right?
Bremer. And since then, I mean, the guy's been around. I don't know how he managed to get the Iran deal. Maybe he wasn't, in the right position during that era, during the Obama years. But this is a guy who's been around for a long time. But go ahead, Emma.
Well, it really is. I'm just curious about, I think there's a lot of really interesting writing and depressing writing about how foreign policy has been entirely inculcated from electoral politics in many ways. I mean, we haven't been able to test that theory because I do think that most voters who are voting for Harris perceive her as just like, okay, she's not Biden. She may not pursue this exact strategy. But in terms of Biden himself, like, Dropsite posted this clip. It's 11 seconds. If we could just play it really quickly, Bradley, of Biden being asked about some of this escalation, and he just trails off here. Here we go.
Would you support Israel striking Iran's oil facilities, sir?
We're in discussion of that. I think that would be a little. Anyway.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway.
Okay.
So I wanted to play that
discussing it.
because, because like when we talk about Brett McGurk and his role, and Hochstein, or I'm forgetting his name exactly, but yeah, these two advisors who seemingly, according to Politico, are basically just like running the foreign policy right now as it relates to Israel. We should be having this conversation about Biden's just kind of not with it, and he's given the not that this would be in contrast to his overall Zionism and ideology about this, but like it feels like there's a leadership vacuum, and it feels like these deep state ghouls have essentially just been handed over this policy in an election year where Biden really doesn't have anything on the line. He's a lame duck, which I think also undercuts his negotiating power when he doesn't want to cut off arms. What do you make of that dynamic and how it relates to the election and how it relates to how Netanyahu may perceive this as the most opportune time to take advantage of this leadership vacuum?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So there was this reporting that showed that the elements of the State Department and the Pentagon were pushing back against this like full-scale war being launched in Lebanon. And McGurk and Hochstein were privately telling the Israelis, actually, it's fine, like go for it. But, mum's the word. And the way that it was presented publicly is that mum's the word on U.S. support for this operation, because it wouldn't look good. Just be bad PR. But that's not actually the real reason that it was mum's the word. It was mum's the word because it was in conflict with what the Pentagon and the State Department wanted. And so it's like, well, wait a minute. We understand we don't elect exactly the State Department and the Pentagon, but we do elect the president, who then appoints people to the Pentagon and the State Department. Who are these other guys? Like, who are these other people that are out there telling Netanyahu, yeah, actually go ahead and do it? And what that doesn't mean that we're going to publicly support it, but what it tells Netanyahu is that he can do it and there will be no penalty because we're too divided and we're too crippled to be able to effectively say anything about it. And look, hey, Brett said it was cool, man.
Well, here's the part that I don't. I mean, all of that, makes sense to me, or at least I can. Let me put it this way: I can understand it. I don't. It makes no. It shouldn't exist. But so, from the perspective of the Harris campaign, like, if there is this type of dissent that exists there, and we don't know where. I mean, Biden presumably either A has no problem with what McGurk, I mean, maybe McGurk and Hochstein are just doing what Biden says.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's hush is because I don't want a big story about how I'm not, I'm bumping heads with the State Department and the Defense Department. I want to avoid that type of press. You guys do it, and I'll just, it's like that Saturday Night Live Ronald Reagan sketch that Phil Hartman did that famously was like, Reagan's there, and when there's cameras, he's like, I don't know what's going on. And as soon as they go, he's like bringing out maps and stuff like this. I mean, maybe that's part of it. But from the perspective of the Harris campaign, like, and maybe I overestimate it, and maybe it's just my own projection, right? Like, but this doesn't seem to be helping the Harris campaign. And it seems to me that there is so little that they would have to do, because I don't think Harris, frankly, has any influence over any of what's going on in this instance. She's part of the administration, but I don't think she has any influence on it. But she does have the ability to signal to the electorate that like things are going to change when I get into office. B, it also puts Netanyahu on notice. I mean, 3 months ago, the impact that it would have had on Netanyahu might have been, I got to speed things up, but he clearly already feels like I got to do this now. And if she puts it out there by any mechanism, even if it's like that, we're going to tap the brakes on this, or this isn't going on, or McGurk is gone, or whatever it is, it seems like that's a winning proposition across all of her incentive structures. Unless either A, she's just too afraid to weigh in, or agrees with Biden. I mean, what's your sense of this?
And it's going to get even worse for her if gas prices continue spiking as a result of the speculation that Israel's going to, launch a massive attack, or the actual fact of a massive attack. Like the timing here is just comically predictable. Like 11
this is
months
not a
ago,
coincidence. This is not a coincidence.
I'd be like, if Netanyahu's going to like blow this into an all-out regional war, let's just throw a dart at the calendar and guess what month he might pick.
Yep.
To make this happen. Oh, amazing! October of 2024. What are the chances that it all landed right there for Netanyahu? And so, in some ways, Harris has to actually do something, because gas prices mean that it's beyond the realm of rhetoric. Like, she can say she's going to tap the brakes, or she's going to get rid of the particular bureaucrats, but if people are paying $4.50, $5 a gallon in mid to late October for gas because the whole region's on fire, they're not going to want to hear that. They're just going to be pissed off.
Absolutely.
And they're going to vote for the other party. And
Biden seems that those comments, that was what he was saying, mumbling there, was that basically he's not ruling out an attack on Iranian oil fields, which is I'm really trying not to have rose-colored glasses about this whole thing, but he's lost it. I mean, this is insanity. And
that's not rose-colored glasses.
I know, but like in terms of the difference between Harris and Biden, like he's not operating, it seems to me, with her self-interest in mind as it relates to the election at all. He's thinking in the terms of an ideological Zionist, which is, I'm going to cement Israel's position in the region with the time that I have left, and the consequences may not be clear to him, because it's not clear to me that he's all there anymore.
And he's just not equipped to answer those questions, because we don't even know what he means by that. Does he mean, yeah, I've heard the reports and we're telling Israel not to do that? Maybe. Does it mean we're brainstorming it with Israel, which oil fields to hit and how to hit them? Like, we have no idea what thought is going on in his mind and what he means when he tries to translate that into words, and then he drifts off with anyway.
Well, I mean, he doesn't. I mean, it's his way of saying, like, I'm not going to go into this. This is too complicated for me to sort of like come up with a public-facing comment. I mean, I think that's really what it is. But it seems to me that the part of the calculation, I would imagine, is the Biden administration essentially, from what I've read, according to oil traders and other folks online, is the Biden administration essentially broke OPEC's pricing power, at least for an extended period of time, with maneuvers by releasing the strategic reserve and then buying back. It drops the price and then they buy it back, and they have the ability to do that. And I wonder if they're not thinking like, we can absorb this. Like, there may be 7 cents again over the course of the next 30 days. Maybe there's a 7 or 10 cents of rise in gas.
We can handle that,
but nothing that's going to make like huge, earth shattering news stories. But again, it still doesn't address like why, putting aside the rise in gas prices. And again, maybe this is like my own projection, but if I'm worried about Michigan, if I'm worried about Pennsylvania, as a first order, I'm now worried about Lebanese Americans who may not have necessarily, felt as intensely about Gaza as obviously Palestinian Americans. But they may see like there's just absolutely no reins on Israel. But also as a second order issue, the activists who are supposed to be getting out the vote, and they're not seeing any indication from Harris that there's going to be any type of like meaningful change. I'm not capable of assessing whether Harris is going to implement any change, meaningful change or otherwise, but like as a campaign electoral matter, they don't seem to be indicating anything.
Right. And there are a bunch of Lebanese Christians who,
that's what I'm talking about.
They hate Hezbollah.
Yep.
And you're even losing them because you're not even willing to show any concern about American citizens who are in Lebanon getting bombed by American bombs. And it raises all of these questions. Like, wait a minute, you can't even control the offensive of your own client state long enough to like get an orderly evacuation of the American citizens in Lebanon. On October 12th, with Ben Gurion Airport, still operating just fine, State Department started chartering planes to get Americans out of Israel if they wanted to take the chartered flights. They were even taking their pets. Like, they could take their pets out. In Lebanon, China has done evacuations of its citizens. The UK has done evacuations of its citizens. The French have sent like a naval ship down there to begin evacuations of its citizens. The State Department has just said the airport's open. Good luck. And the airport's south of Beirut too, so it's like difficult to get
more
to
dangerous.
Either way.
Yeah.
Flights are like $8,000 or something, and every flight you buy gets canceled. And they're just like, yeah.
But doesn't that indicate the rudderless leadership I'm describing? Like, there's nothing going on in the White House.
Why? Like, it wouldn't even offend AIPAC,
right?
For you to say some nice things about just the American citizens in Lebanon and how you're concerned for them and you're going to organize, their evacuation to safety. Like, nobody would even be bothered by that I can think of.
Matt Miller was apparently parsing the
American permanent resident,
the permanent resident status of Kamel Jawad from Michigan, who was killed in Lebanon. But apparently, they said, well, we understand he was not an American citizen. He was only a legal permanent resident. but there is some indication that maybe, in fact, no, that's not the case. He may have actually have voted in the past. May obviously would have to be a citizen for that. But nevertheless, it's also like, why are you parsing this stuff?
Right.
I mean, can you imagine? I don't know, the Trump administration parsing stuff on Khashoggi. It was he was just a he was just a
he was not a citizen. Yeah.
Right. He was just a resident. I mean, like, people would be incredibly offended by this. And I don't know. It is I worry about it, obviously, from a foreign policy perspective, in terms of it's over in terms of the Biden administration, but whether Harris has any plans, but also from an electoral standpoint, it seems utterly bizarre. They just don't seem to want to engage.
Yeah, a couple other things Michigan Democrats have done. There was that whole Dana Nessel, Rashida Tlaib thing.
Yep.
But then there was also, after all these campus protests, the students got together and endorsed a candidate for Board of Regents. Like every 2 years, like 2 of the 8 regents are up for election. And they endorsed this like human rights attorney. I think her name was Hueda. Like 600-700 students like show up to the Democratic convention wearing like yellow, like Hueda t-shirts. They do everything right inside the system. They got their petitions out, and they're like, and it looks like, based on that turnout, like an overwhelming nomination. So it's not even that she's going to win the Board of Regents position. She would just be one of like the Democratic nominees. They like make these students sit around for like 8 hours. They delay announcing the results of that particular election until the very final thing. They send a woman out on stage who like mumbles that the other person won, doesn't list the tally. They don't explain, because it's a weighted system, where like county chairs get weighted heavier than these chairs and that. And the students are just left there like with the lights going up, like, what the hell just happened? And so like all of these efforts that Uncommitted and others are making to operate inside the Democratic tent and be part of this big coalition that disagrees about some things and agrees about others are just being spat on left and right.
And I mean, there is a quality to this that we're sort of like watching the full sort of like arc of Obama from the 2008 campaign, but going all the way to 2012, like where it's like there's a realization of, I mean, all this enthusiasm. I mean, it's all compressed into like a 3-month period of time, frankly, with Harris, but all this enthusiasm at the beginning, and then a slow recognition that, wait a second, we're not super interested in that type of energy. We're looking for something different, and our policies align that way. Again, it's very truncated, very difficult to assess, but that's sort of like, I'm getting that feeling.
And the truncated nature of it, I think, is also just exacerbated by the fact that she's using the entire Biden team for her campaign. Like, they used the entire infrastructure that was put in place by the Biden campaign that she just basically took over. So all the voters that Biden was targeting, these moderate Republicans, the Liz Cheney thing being, the rally yesterday, which was disgusting, but designed for moderate Republicans. I mean, it's Harris could be identical to Biden. We don't really know in this view, because it's just, it's still the same campaign, and they're using the same strategies that Biden would have used.
Except we're not even lucky enough to get identical, because when it comes to like Wall Street economic policy, labor policy, that's the one thing she's breaking from him. There's an article in the FT today that quotes 2 Wall Street executives. She's been doing this like this campaign where she's trying to like tell everybody that she's friendlier to Wall Street than Biden is. 2 Wall Street executives say that she assured them that she can get rid of Gary Gensler and Lena Khan. Like, a campaign official is quoted on background saying that they're that's not exactly what she said, but Mark Cuban has said publicly, and he's a surrogate of hers, that she's against regulation by litigation.
Yes, like, we played that clip the other day. He was on CNBC, and he said, "They told me to say this."
Yes,
like,
that's called enforcement.
Yeah.
And she
mean,
also invited the Visa CEO to the residence, according to this FT article. Last week, the DOJ sued Visa for an illegal monopoly and ripping off small businesses and consumers. The next week, Kamala Harris has the CEO at the vice presidential residence to court him and assure her that she doesn't believe in like litigation. Like
it's
Yeah.
it's disturbing. And again, like we're in that situation where it's like, I genuinely do believe that, Donald Trump has to lose. And she is the only vehicle in which to beat Donald Trump. But this is
you seem more convinced of that than the Harris campaign. It's like they don't seem to have any like urgency.
Well, that's the other part that I worry about. Like I say, I have like a policy concerns, what she's going to do when she's in office, and then I also have an electoral concerns because I'm not sure. Like, there's a level of confidence in I guess you can't do that in college basketball anymore when you like a four corners where it's like we're just trying to run out the clock here, and I just don't know. I mean,
Well,
it's clear they have a January 6th strategy, right?
Yes.
Like they must have known that Smith was coming out with this stuff. They are really pushing it to bring Lynn Cheney on stage. Frankly, I mean, I worry that there is a mentality that is analogous to for every blue collar guy we lose in Pittsburgh, we're going to pick up two in the Philly suburbs. Like it didn't work out like that last time. And I just wonder, like, who is Lynn Cheney? Liz Cheney, or any of the Cheneys for that matter, or Dick. But Ryan, like who are they really getting? Like, I mean, is there a constituency out there?
Maybe this is what Emma was going to say, but they're looking at polling that says that some people code her as too liberal.
Yep.
And some of that is just, I think, race and gender. That Biden could be to her left on economic policy, every day and twice on Sunday, but he codes as like a white centrist and she codes as somehow left. And so in order to like satisfy if a black woman is going to run, like she has to run to the center by this reasoning,
right?
Like way to the center and overcompensate for the like implicit assumptions that people have that, oh, well, she must be a radical communist.
Those are the two polling issues that are there. Like, I'm just saying what this campaign, a standard Democratic Party campaign, not a movement campaign, not someone that's going to bring out low propensity voters. This is how 90% of Democrats that would be in a general election would be running. They're looking at the two liabilities for her: too liberal, bad on immigration. And the entire focus of the campaign since the convention and since her convention speech has been look tough and sprint to the center and say how you love Republicans. And for me, like, I don't know that with this set of circumstances, with her being so poorly defined to the public and with that perception being that she's too liberal, with this short time frame, I don't know that's the wrong strategy to win. I just don't know. And I don't have access to the internals to make that assessment, but it is such a unique set of circumstances that, like, hey, she could govern as a centrist. We don't necessarily know. But for a campaign to be a movement that galvanizes people who are maybe lower propensity voters, that would take a long ramp up period. And she would have to be offering programs in a populist manner that she was never going to do. So in terms of the type of campaign that she ended up running, the strategy makes sense within that context. But it just sucks for the progressive movement more broadly because of the gains that we had made in that Bernie Sanders period.
Yeah, and then the question is, are there like suburban Democrats or suburban independents who are swayed by Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney being involved with the campaign?
Well, that's my question. Like everything Emma's just said, okay, if she wins.
Right.
I mean,
but Liz Cheney is a substitute for, in people's minds, January 6th. So when she comes on, but I know it's stupid, Sam. They could do without it. But this is what they're thinking. I'm just like,
no, I know what they're thinking. Oh, I get what they're thinking. I mean, they're trying. I just wonder, where's the evidence that anyone gives a crap about Liz Cheney? That, like, at one time she may have
including
had
her district.
Exactly. I mean, one time she may have had a constituency, but I'm not convinced that there is a constituency out there for her that is
isn't
on
already Venn diagram completely with MSNBC.
Well,
exactly.
But that
Like,
rally that she did with Liz Cheney was very well attended the other day. Like there were
people
lines
wanna
around
go
the block.
See, Kamala Harris, and I don't know if
Maybe,
that they're
right.
there because they want to see Liz Cheney. And to the extent that there are people there who want to see Liz Cheney, I'm not convinced that they're already not like rushing to the polls anyways.
Right.
My concern is that every time you put Liz Cheney up there, you are maybe losing some of people who were sort of like midway propensity voters. And that's my biggest concern about it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Ryan, tell us.
Ryan, can solve this. For me, it's just, I'm trying to fight between like what my politics are and what I would wish that the campaign would do versus the data that I'm seeing about the gains in the swing states and the assessment of her that she's getting in terms of her being too liberal. With this truncated period to define her, I don't know how the outcome would be if she went in a different direction. I just don't know.
The problem is we don't really know what people mean by too liberal, and sometimes is that code for she's too socialist, like she's too left on economic policy, or is
she's too not white and too not male.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Right.
And that's why they're putting walls out there too. Apparently more, he's going to be doing more cable hits and things like that to reassure white men.
I mean, they always should have had him doing that. Like,
exactly.
It never made sense that he did a bunch of cable hits. People loved him, so they made him the VP, and then they put him in the kennel.
Yeah, it's very odd. All right, well, let me ask you about a couple other things too. Longshoremen's strike settled. That is
well, they're back to work.
They're back to work, but let's say it's punted.
Right.
So it no longer becomes a potential like nightmare scenario where 2 weeks from now, people don't have food in their supermarkets, essentially.
Right. Basically, they bought them off with a wage increase to get back to work, and then they're going to fight about the automation later.
The Biden administration did not weigh in with Taft-Hartley. They stayed to the sidelines. I also read a theory, I don't know if it's true, that part of that was a function of the longshoremen agreeing to continue to sell, to ship any type of weapons if necessary. There were exemptions to what they weren't working on. Putting that aside, the firefighters don't come out with an endorsement. Like what does it say about transactional, about deliverism when we see the Teamsters, and apparently Teamsters, I think it was in Nevada, broke with it. Was it in Nevada? They broke with the national Teamsters. But what does it say where, literally saving the pension of 400,000 of your fellow Teamsters doesn't convince you?
What have you done for me lately?
Exactly. I mean,
the pension is saved. So now what? It reflects the cultural problems, I think. And Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. So, the idea would be, would they have endorsed Joe Biden? Like, because Joe Biden did those things, and Joe Biden is very much a hard hat union guy. Kamala Harris is a purple shirt, SEIU union person.
Right.
And they both are very clear about that. Like, that's like Biden would tell his staff, like, if there's a union invitation to speaking, he's like, are there going to be hard hats? And if the answer is yeah, then Biden's there. If no, well, let's see if we can squeeze that in. Not so sure. Just didn't do it for him. So swapping him out matters. But also, like, a ton of the Teamsters, a ton of these building trades unions, like, these are Trump supporters, just culturally. Many of them genuinely believed this, according to like union officials I've talked to over the years, that Trump's rhetoric around immigration and his immigration policy was directly linked to the wage increases that they saw under Trump. Like, that is a connection that they made in their mind. So that would actually be deliveryism
From their perspective.
confirmation, like the confirmation of the idea. Now, you can argue with them about the point, but they believe that like this guy promised a thing, he delivered the thing, they got higher wages, so therefore they're going to reward him. And that
I should just say, in terms of the delivery trades, just so that we can provide what I think is a more accurate narrative, is that housing starts were so anemic for years because of the way that Obama handled the foreclosure crisis, et cetera, that when housing needs came back, there was just a lot less people in the building trades. And so they got they made more money. But
and unemployment was pushed way below what Larry Summers said was possible, to the credit at the time of Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell. Like they pushed farther than some economists thought possible, tightened up the labor market, and you got higher wages. Like that's what I would argue. But from their perspective, they saw it differently.
Let's talk about one more element of the campaign. It's the get out the vote. Like, you know, I've told the story many times, but Mike from Pennsylvania, who now does his own Twitch stream, he had called into the program the day after the Trump election in 2016 and said, you know, we were doing get out the vote. And because in 25% of the people we were knocking on the doors for the past 3 days were Trump voters. And part of that was that
this is 2020 or 16?
This is 2016. Mm-hmm. And part of it was Clinton had, instead of, because there was no like sort of like deep grassroots enthusiasm for him, they didn't have as many volunteers. And so they got like the Google people to do modeling instead of actual in-person canvassing, who could come back and go like, these models are wrong. I just knocked on, you know, a bunch of houses and a bunch of those people are going to vote for Trump. So we should not be sending get out the vote people in 45 days. We should not be sending out people to knock on their doors. The Trump people can knock on those people's doors, but they just went on this modeling, assumed that they had gotten it right. And because that's, you know, the resources they had. My point is that we never hear about really what's going on with the get out the vote operations. At least I don't, until after the election. Are you hearing stuff like, I'm reading this thing about Wisconsin where Charlie Kirk's enterprise was there doing the get out the vote stuff, and Elon Musk has just come in and Bigfooted him with his pack, and they've taken over. That seems like when you're 30 days out, you're 30 days out, and all of a sudden, like, you're still having turf battles.
Yeah.
That suggests to me that like maybe they're not getting things straight, but maybe I don't know. I mean, so are you hearing anything, Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to add to this. This is so TPUSA can double its focus on Arizona, Sam, which we've joked about before. They failed miserably about with Kari Lake last time around.
Under Biden, what I was hearing is that the cost of canvassers, you got low unemployment, higher wages, and also absolute like hostility toward Biden from anybody under 40 meant you were having to pay like twice as much for canvassers as before. I think that's come down a little bit under Harris because people have just may not love her, but they have less hostility. There's less hostility out there, like abject hostility to her. But it's a serious challenge. They don't have the volunteers like they did, under Obama, and with the economy what it is, and with the lack of enthusiasm, they're paying like serious amounts of money, and also they have nothing to build on because in 2020, you remember, they just gave up canvassing altogether because they didn't. Republicans canvassed like it was a normal election year because they didn't care about COVID and masks and all that stuff. And Democrats were like, we're not going within 6 feet of anybody, so we're not going to knock on any doors.
So, I mean, I guess that dynamic is where I worry about things like Gaza and Lebanon and
Who wants to knock on doors for that? You
Lynn
might
Cheney.
go out and vote. You might go out and vote for it, but you're definitely not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're depressing the activists. You're depressing the volunteers on some level. But I'm speculating. I don't know about the data. I mean, have you heard anything about like what the Republican operation is like? Because I got to imagine if you've got to come in and pay, and particularly, I mean, with all due respect to your friends on the right, I know you've been hanging around with Matt Walsh a lot. My sense is, they will suck every dollar out of every operation that is there. And it's not like they don't have the same, I've talked to people about like, the difference between right wing and, progressive lobbyists is that, if you're lobbying for the right wing, you just don't have the same like deliverable requirements. It's just a question of like, did you win or did you lose? And and on some level, like, these are one-offs every 4 years. The fact that US, the Turning Points is back in this game suggests to me that like there's other considerations that people have rather than results, right? Like they didn't win in 2022.
Yes. Yeah. They had nothing in 2016 and still won. So, and then Democrats did nothing on the ground in 2020 and they still won. So in some ways we'll find out how much it matters, but yeah, you're right that like, particularly on the right, the level of grift is something like 80%. Like the skim, they don't skim off the top. They skim off the top and that's what goes to the program.
Right. You get the 10% VIG.
You get the skim.
We get the principle. That's essentially what it is.
Yes.
But I guess we'll see. But it just does.
And it doesn't matter anyway.
I mean, it seems like that for Trump's campaign, where you look at the early polling, I don't know if it still is like this, but if you were a low propensity voter, if you had not voted in the past 3 elections, you were more likely to support Trump. If you had voted in the last 3 elections, you were more likely to support, I guess, Harris or Biden, maybe. I haven't seen breakdowns like that over the past couple of months. But I imagine what we're looking at is the mid-level propensity voters. Those are the ones that it seems like the Harris campaign should be getting out. And I guess.
Well, Obama's about to start campaigning for her next week. That'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I saw some reports about there being a good amount of volunteers, but maybe I'm wrong about that. It certainly feels like enthusiasm's petered out over the past, since the convention, really, since she made the right wing pivot in this direction. So,
but there is an intense drive to fight Trump. Like that's at the beating heart of all of those surges in volunteers that you're seeing. So there is that. Like we shouldn't discount that. There's an enormous, and a ton of them are watching this program right now. Yep. Like they're fired up and they're going to do everything they can to keep Trump out of office. And they would have even done it for Biden reluctantly and like half-heartedly, but they'd have thrown themselves in it just to keep Trump out.
Right. 100%. And I think that's a worthwhile endeavor. It's just, I'm not worried about the people who listen to this program. I'm worried about the people who, the idea of listening to a political show on YouTube would be like, what? Why would I ever do that? Those are the people that I'm most concerned about. Anything else, like over the next 4 weeks, is there something that you're looking for as any type of signifier or what?
Yeah, I think gas prices and, a cataclysmic like escalation in the region, like those, like, and it's a nightmare for Democrats because, even if they stop weapons shipments like today, like he's probably got enough, in the kitty to kind of light things on fire.
Right.
And so you're putting yourself at the grace and the mercy of Benjamin Netanyahu.
who has done very well for himself by not listening to any restraint that coming from any quarters whatsoever. I mean, his political fortune seems to be to have improved despite all of it.
Solidified his position.
Yeah.
We didn't even get a chance to talk about the debate, but I guess that gives us a sense of like how much resonance that's going to have.
Yes. Debates, I said this before, debates, vice presidential debates are like high school football games. Like everybody involved finds deep meaning in them and they really matter a lot to those people. Everybody else is like, doesn't really matter. And you will watch the game for like 5 minutes and be like, yeah, this looks like a football game. But if your kid's not playing, if it's not your high school, you're like, this doesn't really mean anything.
Sad to say, but true. Ryan Grimm, always a pleasure. Any stories coming up from the job site that we should keep our eyes open for?
I'm going to do one on this Lena Khan, and also like having the Visa CEO over. We've got a really cool podcast coming out, a 4-part podcast, like investigative series that will be on our drop site news feed. That I think that'll be out next week. That's going to be really good.
Can you tell us what it's on or no?
It's an investigation into the way that Israel uses its conflicts to really to create its weapons industry. So, and a kind of an updated look at that.
All right, we'll check it out. Looking forward to that story about Lena Khan too. This is, I don't think I've ever seen a greater campaign to get rid of a specific bureaucrat, nor, frankly, a greater campaign to push back on it. Like I don't remember, fighting over who's going to be the FTC chair in Obama's second term or whatever it was. Like, no,
never. Maybe there were some New Deal guys that were like hardcore that roused up, but I don't know that well enough. But
they were whining
really
on
interesting point.
CNBC that they didn't ask at the debate between Harris and Trump whether or not she would get rid of Lena Khan. It's just like, no, this just matters to you guys. Like, this is the fight that they're trying to make public to try to lock her in. Which is
weird. What morons to make that fight public?
They realized, it seemed to me, that they had gone public too early, and they made a mistake in doing that. And now it also seems weird. Like, I mean, this is it. If I'm Mark Cuban, Mark Cuban feels like a rat F to me. Like, I mean, it's like, why are you saying this? Like, do you think that we don't have TVs? Like, this is not a fight. This is not a fight that's going to take place over the course of the wide electorate. It's only going to be one that is like, a mini version of, net neutrality on some level.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. Ryan Grimm, always a pleasure.
Indeed. Nice
Thanks,
to see
Ryan.
you guys.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
All right, folks, we're going to take a, well, now people are looking on the IMs are getting all sort of like upset about Harris and this and that. Like I look, it is important. We have a binary choice, and Trump and Republican empowerment is an absolute non-starter. There is literally, I don't believe, a single policy or situation for anybody except for a very small group of people, moneyed group of people who are going to benefit from a Trump campaign. It is important to be clear-eyed about who Harris is in terms of, or at the very least, to be put on notice that, like, look, you gotta be, don't fall in love with your candidates, folks. Support them because you're supporting a broader constituency and issue set, but do not fall in love with your candidates because it will keep you from knowing where pressure must be exerted. Who knows about the campaign stuff? We can sit here and critique electoral decisions. And if she wins, nobody's going to remember that we brought these up. If she loses, we're going to be able to say, we told you so. And as if we were 100% sure about this, when of course we're not. So it's speculative. It is to give you some insight as to how this works. And to motivate you in specific areas. Like, I mean, honestly, it is worth you reposting that story about why Lena Khan is good.
Yeah.
It is worth you sending it, to 20 of your Facebook friends, 19 of whom will be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why would I even care about this? Because if it impacts one of them, I mean, the number of people who need to push back and sort of like articulate and give the future administration a sense, who are invested in who the FTC chair is so small relative to the population, to the number of people who are going to vote, for it to have an impact, that I think it would shock all of us. It is just a question of like, if it becomes too toxic for them to sort of dismantle the antitrust and the labor gains, then they will just avoid it because they've got other things they've got to deal with.
I mean, just remember where we were in 2020 with Biden, right? Biden ran as the most right-wing Democrat in that primary race, and he ran as a very centrist, I would say center-right Democrat during that election. When he got in power, there were constituencies within the Democratic Party that were able to get Lena Khan to be the FTC chair, because I think it's probably true that Elizabeth Warren cut some deals. Bernie Sanders was able to influence things in the labor sector. And Julie Su, we will maybe play a little bit of her later, has been really phenomenal and was instrumental in getting a significant pay raise for the longshoremen. I really just feel like people are getting caught up in the moment of the way that she's campaigning and are not not necessarily seeing it as what it is, the most cynical strategy possible in a very set of extremely narrow circumstances where they're trying to define her in a way that doesn't scare off these very specific voters that they're trying to target. Now, I buy the stuff on Wall Street and the crypto stuff. I do think that she's probably worse on that stuff than Biden, but she may be better than Biden on some stuff. Like, we're not too far off from when she very cynically endorsed Medicare for all and the Green New Deal and then walked it back. So do I believe that she's sincere? I don't think she was sincere about that, but I also don't think she's sincere about this. I think it's about where there can be pressure exerted. And we're also just like a month and a half or 2 months from when she picked Tim Walz over Josh Shapiro. For me, that indicates something that's more positive as well. So this is all about power. We're in the period where they're trying to get power. They're trying to win. And it's not necessarily pretty, and it's going to be a difficult and an alienating few months for the left. But we are not in a place right now where she could be inserted and run a campaign that is authentically leftist, because she's not that kind of candidate. This campaign is not that kind of campaign. Nor are the conditions set up right now for that campaign to be able to get off the ground in that regard. So I'm just being extremely practical and realistic about what this indicates. And I don't think we should take this post-convention period as like, this is exactly how she's going to govern. I don't necessarily think that's true.
I agree with that. But I would see your Biden, sort of like surprise on Biden, and see it with, putting Obama 08 there, where a lot of people like saw there were hints as to who Trump, Obama was, I should say. I just remember when Goolsbee, his top economic advisor, was up in Canada saying, like, yeah, don't listen to the NAFTA stuff that he's talking about. So it cuts both ways, I guess, is really the point that we're trying to make.
So if
and
she's
we'll see.
Obama, then we get Phil Gordon as national security advisor, and they're talking about the Iran deal now publicly, Tim Walz and Nancy
Yep.
Pelosi, and we're in a better situation in the Middle East. So
Yep.
like, pick,
I know it's tough to say.
It's just like, okay, so then maybe she's worse than both Obama and Biden.
I'm
don't
saying
know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
But the Walls pick makes me feel like there's at least, here's the bottom line. I don't care about her as a person. I really don't. But my optimism about where the Democratic Party is from where it was when Obama got elected is
100% true.
legitimate.
100% true.
So
Yeah.
I just want us to have perspective. Like the party, there's more windows to influence her than there were windows to influence Obama because of where the left was in 2008 versus where we are now. AOC is a power player in the party. She's going down with Bernie Sanders to rally in Texas. They're in terms of her fundraising apparatus, etc. So just it's agonizing. But I think we're going way too far with our proclamations about how she would be based on very cynical campaign strategy.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if they're doing anybody's doing proclamations.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just
speculations.
Speculations. But I don't want us to be doomer about it because this is all within like a very cynical electoral context that is literally designed to not appeal to us.
People are all over the place with their responses on the IMs. We will read these in the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that can make this that makes this show possible. You become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half. And you can IM us. Texas deadline to register to vote is Monday, October 7th, says El Conniption. So make sure you get out there. Colt Dog says her right-wing shift seems to have worked with some right-wing Florida voters, which is why she's so close here, but it's depressing for me as a leftist.
Yes, they're trying to get Allred elected in Texas. That's why she's saying I would shoot someone if they came into my home. Like I'm just trying to underscore how mercenary this all is.
To be accurate, thank you, Emma. Sam wants to pander to his audience. Well, if you saw the IMs, your assessment of our audience, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I couldn't tell you what the audience reaction would be to 90% of what I say. Wet Blanket says you're reading too much into the Walls pick between the 101 and 5. I agree with Emma. It just goes back and forth.
She would have picked Shapiro if he had acted like he won the job. It was a decision based on personality, not policy, says Wet Blanket. So you think that's it? You think it was just based on personality?
I have a feeling the personality was the sort of backfilling of a rationale to explain the pick.
That would be an incredibly shallow way for someone to campaign for president. And I have a very hard time believing that that's the case.
Hack All Things says, Sam pandered to me by sending me pizza monthly. Folks, don't forget also justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee and hot chocolate. Here's the Majority Report blend, just as a reminder. Just Coffee, of course, fair trade coffee, really great for their vendors. I should say their suppliers. Check it out. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. Emma, ESVN.
Bradley and I gave our picks against the spread yesterday for week 5, and the Falcons already screwed us with an overtime touchdown victory. Gosh, this is why gambling's terrible. YouTube.com/ESPN show.
And Bradley, do you know what's on Left Reckoning?
Yeah, so Matt and David on Tuesday discussed the ongoing conflict between Iran, Israel, and Lebanon, the longshoreman strike, as well as the J.D. Vance dossier censorship controversy with a staff writer at Jacobin, Branko Marcetic. So check that out on youtube.com/Left Reckoning, or you can go to patreon.com/Left Reckoning to access more features and access the post game.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, time for the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking
Oh,
for a
wow.
second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this CBD?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is this?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? Oh, no sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Who libertarians? They're so stupid though. Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge met.
Positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-35 501 1 half 3 8s
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5 4 $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes with satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like
Yeah.
everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. It is the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. Though arguably, we just don't. This is not the season where things are fun. I mean, we try. But let's start with this. Let's get this one out of the way.